You're listening You're listening to Rims Gray Hair Chronicles top 3 stories of the week. The world's gone strange, but we love a good peek. From shadows deep to the global stage, we bring the truth from age to age. With harmony bold and a skeptical tone, we dig up the news they don't want known. So stoke the fire and have a seat. This week's top 3 can't be beat. Pilgrims Gray Chronicles.
Well, welcome, travelers. How's it going? Another evening at the Pilgrims Gray Inn, where the fire flickers, casting long shadows across ancient walls. And tonight, as always, we gather by the hearth to share stories, and word has come from far and wide. The couriers of truth have delivered their parchments, and the scrolls of our age are unrolled before us. From the distant lands of Gaza to the deepest corners of the elite's hidden world, the top 3 stories of the week have arrived. So the first tale hails from the torn streets of Gaza, where hunger is being used as a weapon, but the true victims, the hostages in captivity, remain unseen. Their suffering buried beneath a narrative forged by the powerful. But we won't be fooled by these false tales. Nope. We shall uncover the truth. And next, our messenger brings us to the dark, twisting corridors of power where the name of Jeffrey Epstein still lingers like a shadow. His world of luxury, secrets, and influential friends has shaped history in ways many would prefer to forget. And everybody involved in history. Now, who were the figures behind his rise? Who protected him in the darkness, and who may have silenced him when the truth became too dangerous? Clearly not himself. And as the scrolls open, so do the mysteries of our age. So, take your seat, pour your drink, and prepare. The messages from afar are here, and tonight we uncover the hidden truths behind these stories. This is Pilgrims Gray Chronicles. Robert Clark, your host. And, the road goes ever on and the truth waits for no one. So let's get started. So I found this story very interesting. And again, I do honestly try to cover the top 3 stories of the week that have happened this week, but sometimes I just come across some really fascinating information. And I know these 3 stories aren't necessarily 100% things that happened this week. I mean, other than the Gaza thing. But I wanted to share this and the Epstein story because I came across a video that I'm going to share along with the Epstein story of this young man who went through the logs of the video, and I thought did a masterful job of showing why it is clearly doctored. And there's no way that that is just the footage itself that they're selling us. I mean, we kind of know that anyway, but it's really neat to see some young youth of America take the time and effort to go through the logs of the files and demonstrate, in a way that I understood it. So I'm sure you all will be able to understand it as well. What he's saying when he says it, and it's clear they tampered with it. It's clear they took time and effort to edit and save and then upload a version of that video of Epstein the night that the cameras failed. And you'll see for yourself when we get to it. It's the 3rd and final story. But first, World War I, II, and III formula, all right, is our first story. So let's start here with this strange and unsettling connection that's been making the rounds on social media. I came across it and thought it was really interesting. You can kind of see the weird thing up there, the image. I'll zoom in on it in just a second here. so you can check it out more closely. But for now, it can just remain up there, right? So some have started noticing that the start dates of World War One, II, and III, or what many are now calling World War III, yes, the war currently unfolding possibly, seems to share an eerie and undeniable pattern, one that's written in numbers. But before we get carried away with theories, let's break down the math and see if there's any truth to the strange coincidence. Here is a closer look, so you can see. Let me get a little farther down on that so you can kind of maybe look at that a little better. How's that? Beautiful. Okay, so this weirdness. Well, first let's look at World War One. It officially began on July 28th, 1914. The war started after Hungary, oh my gosh, my mouth, declared war on Serbia, triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And this is the event that ignited the catastrophic chain reaction that led, of course, to the First World War. At least that's the mainstream narrative. And so when we add the numbers of the date together, July 7th plus 20, the 28th day in 19 year, in 14 year, it equals 68. 7, 28, 19, 14, right? So next we move on to World War II. The Second World War officially began on September 1st, 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. This invasion triggered declarations of war by France and the United Kingdom. Though there were many underlying causes for World War II, this event is widely accepted as the moment it began. So let's add those numbers up from that date. The 9th of September, right? September 1st, the year 1939. So 9 plus 1 plus 19 plus 39 equals 68. So now we've already got two world wars that begin with the exact same sum, 68, and that's strange enough. But let's take it a step further and look at the possible World War III. World War III, as many view it, began on February 24th, 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, although this conflict has been ongoing since 2014 in a more limited capacity. So the full invasion is seen by many as the actual start of a World War III. So once again, let's add up the date. February 2nd month, the 24th day, the year 2022. So 2 plus 24 plus 20 plus 22 equals 68. So in case you're wondering, yes, and you read that right, the date of World War III, just like the others, adds up to 68. So now let's pause for a moment and just take this in. This theory of the start dates of three of the most significant wars in modern history all share the same numerical total. And what are the odds of that happening purely by chance? And I guess we could say it's not necessarily by chance. You know, we are adding things together and so on. But the fact that those dates are significant dates of battles starting and they all add up to 68 is kind of interesting, I think. It's as if the universe or history itself is echoing some weird pattern or a cycle that's older, than we expect. Or could be just a coincidence, or is there something deeper at play? We know of Albert Pike and his 3 World War letter, right? Or many of us do. If not, you should look it up. It could be a hidden design, woven. And, these folks love to play with numbers, don't they? They communicate to each other through numbers and dates. It's very important to them for some reason. So let's also take a look at how these wars have shaped the world we live in. World War I ended with the fall of empires and the redrawing of national borders, right? Leading to the creation of new countries and the seeds of future conflicts. And then World War II led to the rise of superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, setting the stage for the Cold War and the division of the world into 2 ideological camps. So then we go into World War III, and if it continues to escalate, as many think it might, it could usher in a new world order with political, economic, and military alliances being completely reshaped possibly even leading to a global confrontation like never before. And if Albert Pike is correct, it will overflow into the uh, Israeli Islamic conflict by design. So maybe there's more than just math, of course, but the connection is kind of hard to ignore. I found that article really interesting. And when you add in the fact that both World War I and II were followed by long periods of instability, economic turmoil, and even rebuilding, you start to see a familiar pattern with these folks. They love this because it allows them to further what they want. And so they use wars to further their agenda of having their novus ordo seclorum, which is what Albert Pike was writing about, having 3 world wars to bring that about. It's just interesting that there's a number connection. If I didn't know about all the other stuff, I might just think, oh yeah, whatever, that's ridiculous. Anybody can add numbers up into anything. But I don't. That just made me pause for a minute, you know. And so, while this strange mathematical pattern might make you think twice, let's not ignore the human cost of conflict. And the wars we talk about today aren't just numbers and dates, they're about real people and suffering. And right now, we have in Gaza the truth being buried beneath layers of lies, as usual, and the real victims of starvation are not the ones the media wants you to focus on. So let's shift gears and talk about the hostages and the untold story of suffering that is being ignored, right? Right there, the real victims of starvation in Gaza. So the mainstream media has pushed a narrative about mass starvation in Gaza, but there's a deeper, often ignored reality that needs to be uncovered. The starvation of hostages taken by Hamas, particularly Israeli citizens and other innocent people. So, and Ram Brzezowski and Evyatar David were both captured by Hamas during the October 7th attacks. And this is on hostage starvation and torture. Video footage and images released by Hamas show them in a grotesque state, reduced to bare skin and bones. Their condition is a stark contrast to the well-fed captors of Hamas. Omer Wenkert, a former hostage, publicly shared his testimony of being severely starved, losing 37 pounds while in captivity. He confirmed that his captors lost no weight during the entire period. This highlights the intentional starvation and abuse inflicted on hostages. The images of these hostages starving and tortured are hard to ignore, yet they have not received hardly any global outrage they deserve. Instead, the world continues to focus on the same BS misleading narratives pushed by pro-Hamas media outlets, which is virtually every media outlet for the most part. So then we have false starvation narratives in Gaza. The mainstream media has painted a picture of widespread starvation in Gaza, with children and families allegedly starving in the streets due to Israeli blockades. However, this narrative is misleading. The New York Times had to issue a public retraction after it published a photo of a starving Gazan child, only to admit that the child was suffering from pre-existing health conditions, not starvation caused by the conflict. The focus shifted from the reality of the hostages suffering to a skewed political agenda. And then Bild, Germany's largest newspaper, and Time magazine have both been caught staging photos of Gazan women in desperate need of water, only for independent investigations to show that these images were manipulated or misrepresented. This is nothing unusual. It reminds me of the claims just before we went to war in Iraq for the first time of supposedly babies being thrown out and whatever by the Iraqi invaders and so on and so forth. And it all turned out to be a lie, of course. But by then it was too late. We were already at war. So, and then we have loopholes in the humanitarian aid. 88% of humanitarian aid sent to Gaza by the United Nations has been looted by Hamas or armed groups, according to a leaked UN report. The aid intended for the Palestinian civilians suffering due to the ongoing conflict has been redirected to fuel Hamas's operations rather than helping those in need. Well, that's a shocker. Hamas has been accused of selling aid that is meant for the general population at exorbitant prices, exploiting the situation for profit while leaving civilians to fend for themselves. Again, not a shocker. On the other hand, organizations like the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, are actively working to get aid to civilian safe zones where it's distributed freely to those who need it most. However, these efforts are often overshadowed by the false starvation narrative pushed by international bodies aligned with Hamas's agenda. And then we have Hamas's use of human shields. One of the darkest tactics used by Hamas is its strategy of using civilians as human shields. Many civilians in Gaza are forced or coerced into staying in Hamas controlled zones where they are put directly in harm's way during airstrikes. Evidence has surfaced showing Hamas militants setting up military positions in schools, hospitals, and mosques, ensuring that civilian casualties will be high whenever Israel retaliates. And this war crime is a part of calculated effort to manipulate public opinion. And it works. Anti-Semitism and hate for Israel is at an all-time high right now, and increasing all the time, and casting Israel as the aggressor despite Hamas's deliberate use of civilians for protection. I'm not saying Israel's perfect, by the way, but if you're going to be angry with them, be angry with them legitimately over things that are real and not manipulated by the media. So then we have a lack of international attention to hostages. So while the media outlets continue to focus on the plight of civilians in Gaza, the hostage crisis continues to be completely, if not totally, ignored. The Red Cross and the Red Crescent have been criticized for not demanding to see the hostages and for taking Hamas's word, which is worth nothing, that they are in good health. Mike Huckabee, former U.S. ambassador to Israel, criticized international organizations, calling out the Red Cross and Red Crescent for neglecting their duty to ensure the safety of the hostages while focusing on anti-Israel rhetoric. And then there's the politics behind the media. A whistleblower from the Associated Press revealed how journalists were being pressured to alter their stories to fit Hamas's narrative. Also not a shocker. It happens all the time. Journalists who refused were threatened with retaliation, forcing the mainstream media to push a one-sided story to maintain access and avoid backlash. And then Western governments and international media outlets often turn a blind eye to the atrocities perpetrated by Hamas while simultaneously condemning Israel for retaliating against Hamas's terrorist activities. I'm just saying we could be balanced here, right? Or just tell the truth about things. Don't lopside it. But that's as long as certain people are in control of the media in the world, we're never going to get the straight story. So you're always going to have to take the time to dig under these stories to see what's real. Just know that whatever you're seeing in the mainstream media, probably the opposite is true. Or, So a little bit of other insight on the context of all this and global impact. Israel's humanitarian efforts, despite facing global condemnation, it has consistently gone to great lengths to minimize civilian casualties, despite the fact that there's a tactic that tries to put them purposefully in harm's way. And the Israeli Defense Forces have made public efforts to warn Gaza civilians before airstrikes, using leaflets and text messages to encourage evacuation. The Palestinian population continues to grow at an alarming rate, disproving the accusations that Israel is attempting genocide. All you got to do is look at the numbers. And then we have unreported stories of heroism and survival. There are numerous untold stories of people within Gaza, both Israeli and Palestinian, who've been working together to provide aid and save lives, even amidst the horror. These stories almost never make headlines because they don't fit the popular narrative, but they show the true humanity on both sides of the conflict, rather than focusing on the idea that Israel sucks, which seems to be the main narrative. So while the world's media channels are busy promoting a false narrative, the real crisis continues to unfold in silence. Hostages who are being subjected to inhumane starvation and torture are pretty much forgotten in favor of a politicized one-side portrayal of Gaza's suffering. You know, it's time to at least somewhat try to acknowledge, you know, what's really going on. So these poor innocent people on both sides, you know, we need to confront the media's manipulation of the narrative is what we need to do, but we don't not enough people stand up for it or pay attention. So you know, are we ever going to wake up to the truth or just remain caught in a web of deception spun by those with the agenda? And I know many people think, well, what can I do? Well, like I've said many times, don't think that your small efforts are small if enough people get, you know, engage in a small effort. You know, something as simple as liking a podcast, sharing it. It doesn't have to be mine, but if there's something that you feel could confront this, then put it out there, share it. You know, put the narrative out there, like it, comment, get the algorithm spreading the news, and that little bit that you think is no big deal, the 2 seconds it takes to hit like or subscribe or share the video in a discussion that you see online, say, hey, I think maybe this person is discussing this issue in this podcast or whatever. Take a look at it. Just little things like that. It's the little things, just like Tolkien said. You know, the halflings, hobbits were not huge, brave warriors, but did they not ultimately change the whole landscape of Middle-earth? You know, just through small deeds, small people that think they're insignificant, you can do a lot more than you think. Maybe you'll never see what your efforts produce, but remain faithful in your small things, and you may not see the changes, but others will, and it's important. So here we have the shadowed lives and ties that bind of Epstein's inner circle, allegations, and the hidden power brokers. So we step into a world of luxury, right? Secrecy, power, the world that Jeffrey Epstein meticulously crafted over the years through help, you know, because he's really just a pawn. But behind the facade of opulent homes and private jets and famous faces, there's a darkness that cannot be ignored. In an explosive interview with Epstein's longtime butler, Valdson Vieira Cochran, we hear firsthand accounts of what life was like in the presence of the disgraced financier. I've got it right here. Kaboom. What a charming looking fellow, huh? Yeah. And he says, I was Epstein's butler for 18 years. There's no way he killed himself. Yeah. So we hear firsthand accounts of what life was like in the presence of the disgraced financier. I don't even know why we call him that, because really what he was a trafficker and blackmailer. So these revelations give us a glimpse into the connections between Epstein and the world's most powerful figures, ties that could potentially explain why Epstein's crimes have been allowed to continue, of course, largely unchallenged and for so long. So let's look at a few data points that reveal not just the man, but the tangled web of people who may have enabled his life of excess and abuse, right? So there's the claim of Epstein's good life before his death. Cochran, Epstein's butler for 18 years, insists that Epstein loved life too much to kill himself. And according to Cochran, Epstein was in good spirits just days before his death, discussing investments and future plans. He recalls driving Epstein to Le Bourget Airport in Paris, where he was about to catch a flight to New York, where he was arrested. Cochran notes that Epstein had planned to negotiate bail and had no intention of ending his life. This creates further suspicion, of course, about the official story of suicide. Something, official should just be synonymous with the BS story of suicide. Something Cochran, who had served him closely for years, finds impossible to believe, as do many of us, right? So we have Epstein's alleged connections to powerful figures. Prince Andrew. Cochran describes how Prince Andrew was a frequent guest at Epstein's Paris townhouse. sometimes accompanied by a controversial British photographer known for taking pictures of naked girls, one of whom was accused of having sex with a 13-year-old. This points to Epstein's network involving high-profile figures, including members of the British royal family. And then Bill Clinton. A newly surfaced photograph shows Bill Clinton aboard Epstein's infamous private jet, the so-called Lolita Express, sparking renewed questions about the former president's ties to Epstein. Clinton was reportedly on the plane at least 26 times between 2001 and 2003, though he has consistently denied any wrongdoing. Of course, who in their okay, knowing what we know about the man, do you think he would ever admit to anything unless there was undeniable evidence that everybody could see, like a video that could be demonstrated to not be a deep fake? And then we have Ghislaine Maxwell. According to Cochrane, Maxwell was the true authoritarian boss in the Epstein household, the one who made decisions and ran the daily operations of the empire Epstein built. Maxwell is now serving a 20-year prison sentence for her role in the exploitation of minors, but Cochrane's claims underscore just how intertwined Epstein's world was with the power figures who may have been in the know or complicit. And then we have his investments and connections and allegations of Mossad ties, right? Epstein's finances and his links to various global elites are crucial to understanding his power. So Cochrane shared that Epstein frequently discussed investments in his islands, buying a second island shortly before his arrest. The financiers' connections to people like Bill Gates, Ehud Barak, and Woody Allen show how Epstein cultivated a network of influential, well-off figures. And there are persistent allegations that Epstein may have been connected to Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency. And there's no way that that's not the case when you look at Ghislaine and her background and her father. And Cochrane revealed that Epstein often wore an IDF sweatshirt and laughed off rumors that he was an operative. Still, the Mossad theory persists, and rightfully so, adding another layer of mystery to the entire operation. And then the photo evidence and missing minute of surveillance, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. A photo of Bill Clinton aboard Epstein's private jet has emerged, reigniting questions. Wait a minute. Did I just read that? Yeah, sorry. I wrote my note in here twice, but that has to do with a recent image. It's one of many that Cochrane claims to have in his possession, all of which point to a wider circle of power and powerful individuals linked to Epstein's lifestyle. And the missing surveillance footage, a crucial minute of video from Epstein's cell, has fueled conspiracy theories about his death. And again, rightfully so. The Department of Justice's release of 11 hours of footage, with the exception of that minute, deepens suspicion that Epstein was silenced before he could testify. Or just shuttled away, and allowed to live a life somewhere else is what I think. And so Cochrane recalls a conversation in which Epstein allegedly told him that he had been offered a position in the Trump administration in 2016, but he had turned it down. There's no evidence to support this claim. It's just his word, but it raises questions about the degree to which Epstein might have influenced or interacted with people in power, including the Trump administration. Trump and Epstein falling out in 2004 over a property deal complicates this narrative. However, the mention of a job offer in the White House continues to fuel speculation about Epstein's connections to the highest levels of power. It really doesn't matter if that is true or not. It's clear he had connections to power. So, whether he had connections to Trump or not, to me, is irrelevant. So, the silence around his death, Cochrane reveals that Mark Epstein, Jeffrey's brother, has privately suggested that Epstein may have been murdered, his death not a suicide, but a silencing of a man who may have been out to reveal explosive information. The second autopsy ordered by Mark Epstein lends credence to this theory. Cochrane's perspective being so closely tied to Epstein for so long adds weight to the suspicion. If Epstein truly had plans to negotiate bail and was speaking openly about future investments, it seems highly unlikely that he would have taken his own life. Cochran also exposes the complicit silence of those who frequently frequented Epstein's homes, including Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, and Woody Allen. And these figures visited Epstein's residences, his private island, his Paris townhouse, his New York mansion. But how much did they really know? And more importantly, how much were they willing to ignore in exchange for Epstein's wealth and influence? And the role of Maxwell as the real boss behind the scenes highlights the enabling environment Epstein created. Many of these powerful figures were either complicit, willfully ignorant, or simply too desperate to stay in Epstein's good graces to question what was happening behind closed doors. So the darker side of the Epstein case is still unraveling, and as Cochran's revelations make clear, the picture is far more complicated than the simple narrative of a corrupt financier. And with connections to the highest levels of power in politics, business, and entertainment, Epstein's life and death raise more questions than answers, obviously. Still, and the missing minute of surveillance footage, the strange claims about a job offer from Trump, the multiple ties to political figures paint a picture of a man who may have been much more than just a financier. I think we all know this. And whether Epstein was silenced to protect the powerful or whether his secrets were simply too dangerous to keep, his death is only the beginning of a much larger story that still needs to be told, and the world demands answers. I would like answers, but more than answers, I would like accountability. And there isn't any. And I don't mean for Epstein or whatever. I mean for all the people involved with this. And I think the truth, if it ever comes out, is going to be far darker than anybody's imagined. But let's go to our video clip, shall we? And check this out, because I think this kid does a great job. You ready? Let's make sure we got our volume up. And all right, kid, you are on.
Supposedly, the raw footage of Epstein's cell released by the White House was edited in Adobe, and me being a computer nerd and having nothing else to do with my evening, decided to look into it myself. This is the official FBI memo. Down here, there's going to be two links to two different videos. One is a edited video with higher contrast. That's the second video. This first video is supposedly the raw footage. So I followed that to this link. I downloaded the video. We can see it up here. And I'm going to guide you guys over to here where I'm going to run the following command, exif tool. It's an open source tool that's going to give me the metadata for this video. Boom. And if we look at this section right here, what do we have here? Ooh, Adobe XMP Core 9.0. And if we go down to these history actions, more importantly, we have a saved, created, saved, saved, saved. And then we can look at these history wins to see when these actions were made. So this first action was the created, and then we had about 3 hours, actually almost 4 hours, between the initial project was created and this first save. And then all 3 saves after that were basically one after another. And what I can deduce from that is whoever this MJ Cole guy is, he just spammed the save key 3 times because he was really scared of losing all of his progress. And MJ, let's make more saves throughout our editing process so we don't have to worry about that. And I'm assuming that this last history win was placed in front for some reason. It seems to be the most recent. It also is tagged with a history instance ID that is not a Adobe XMP format history instance ID. So I'm assuming this is the ID that was exported. Anyways, the government thinks you're stupid, so don't let them get away with thinking that. That's the whole point of this video. So supposedly the raw...
And there you have it. Now, I found that easy to follow because I've had to do stuff like that before and search through things. But basically what he's saying is there was a 3, almost 4 hour section in there where it looks like editing went on of the video before it was released, and it was saved a number of times. And of course he jokingly was saying, hey, MJ Cool, you may want to do that as you're working throughout it so that, you don't wait till you're done 3 hours later. And I kind of snickered while I was listening to that because I've been guilty of doing that before too and regretted it because there was one time where my computer froze up when I was working on a song. I lost everything. Oh, I was furious. I didn't even want to work on music for like a week after that. It was very annoying. And so, that is the top three for the night. Embers of our fire are flickering down over here. I can see it, And the last of the courier's parchments are sealed away, and we reflect on the tales we've unearthed tonight, right? From the deceitful narratives in Gaza to the shadowy world of Epstein, we've peeled back the layers of darkness that conceal the truth and gone over some strange stories. And these stories we uncover here are not written in the ink of history, but in the blood of those who fight to keep them hidden. But the road never ends, and neither do the messages, and the scrolls will always arrive, the couriers will always come, and the truth will continue to find its way to our doorstep. So make sure you subscribe and like and comment and send things into us. Sometimes I get my Friday top three ideas from emails that I get from people who are sending me information and sending me things. So continue to do so. They don't ask for any notoriety. They don't want me to read their emails, and that's fine. I don't. So I still have some emails that are long I haven't responded to yet because I haven't had time. I have a lot of things going on. I mean, between working and the podcast and trying to write a book and trying to work out some things for the album to come out this fall, and we're going to do a single song release here soon for you all to listen to, so that when the album comes out, you have some idea of what some things will sound like, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. You've already kind of heard one song it was just an instrumental that'll be on the album that I played, that I decided to make a Father's Day thing. I gave it a Latin title that means to heaven, Father. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I think you can find the video on our YouTube channel. But anyway, until the next time we meet, all my fellow travelers and pilgrims, keep your lanterns burning and your hearts ready. The road is long, night is dark, but the pilgrim's gray inn and all your fellow pilgrims will always guide you towards light. At least that is our goal. And to me, the main light will always be Jesus Christ, because he is light, and in him is no darkness at all. So Godspeed to all of you, and we will play you out with our 70s glam rock outro for Friday night. Let's hear it.